Hello, friends. It's me, Jon Walker. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. If you enjoy listening, please help spread the word, because the more people who listen to the podcast means the more episodes I can justify recording. So, thank you for the help, and that is all for today, other than the podcast, which is right now with my friend Kyle Tekiela. Hello, Kyle.
Jon Walker, Hape.
I met you in high school. You were in a band called Centerfold, and I ended up joining that band.
Yes, I recruited you from your band called Tennis Shoe Experiment, which left two other bandmates very unhappy and made us very happy. And we had a good little run for a minute.
Were your folks supportive of you being in a band, or did they think you were crazy?
No, they were. I always had a lot of support, fortunately. My dad didn't have any kind of, he was always one of those guys who was like, whatever you want to do, man. I don't know how you do it, but go ahead and do it. You know, he was just like kind of supportive from a distance. And I think more just like impressed that someone was doing something other than like regular blue collar work, which is pretty much the standard in both of our families, my mom and my dad.
I remember before I joined Centerfold, you were a year older than me, and I was aspiring basically to be you.
Oh, come on. You're going to spill that on me right now, live, recorded?
I mean, you were the guy. You were the guy in the band.
I definitely was a guy in a band. Whether it was the guy in the band, there's to be debated, but cool, man. I appreciate that. You know what? I always felt like I was the guy in the band, but I felt like you were the guy that was going to make it in a band, if that makes sense.
What do you mean?
Well, like I felt like you had like this raw magnetic talent that I was always inspired by as soon as I met you, which is why I lobbied so hard to get you to quit your band and join my band. And then, and I was right. Like, you went on to great success.
Yeah, so we were in Centerfold, and then we tragically disbanded.
Yeah, man, we had that typical fighting at the end of a band relationship.
Yeah, we had lunch the other day, and I was trying to remember exactly what happened, and I have no idea.
No, there's no real answer. I think we were just having a pissy fit for some reason. You know what it was? Like, I maybe I don't know exactly what it was, but I think our musical taste started to slightly diverge, maybe.
Creative differences.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real epidemic in the industry.
But we made up. That's the important thing, right?
Yeah, and then
now here we are.
You started another band, and I started another band, and we were friendly rivals.
Oh, for sure. It was completely different genres, so It wasn't like we were competition. But we did play at the Battle of Bands together, and that was a blast.
Did we?
Our two bands. Yeah. So the previous year, Centerfold played, and we got like second, and then the next year, your band, Farewell Night, played, and my band, Suspect, played against each other.
Ooh.
And I don't remember what happened there.
Yeah, me neither. We'll have to reference the records.
The Bartlett High School yearbook.
Do you think they list the standings? They should.
I don't know, man.
They should have.
They better.
Yeah.
If not, we need to call somebody.
Yeah, I'm assuming your band was a little bit more mainstream. Like, you had a little bit more of a broader reach, or like the genre.
Yeah, we were like trying to be Dave Matthews Band, Jason Mraz, whatever, pop rock. And you were going down the, I wouldn't call it screamo path, just more like
just heavier
emo rock
or
something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So that happened, Battle of the Bands, and then you graduated and went to college.
Yeah, I made the huge mistake that all bands make when someone goes to college, and then it's all over.
Yeah, where did you go to college?
I wanted to go to Florida State, but we were poor. So I went to Southern Illinois University instead, which is a horrible school. Yes.
On
Look it
record.
up. Look it up on record. It's terrible. There's a couple good things about it. And honestly, the best thing about it was, I got involved. I mean, it's funny because I went down there to study music recording. Like, I wanted to be in bands, but I also wanted to like have a recording studio. That was kind of my business dream. Like, if I wasn't able to make it in a band, I wanted to be in the business
Right.
of recording. And I didn't do any research. Like, I just knew they had a recording program. So when I actually finally went down to Southern and like was admitted and I was there, I went to like 2 classes and I'm like, this is an absolute garbage program. Like, there's no way anyone gets anything of value out of this program. So I pivoted to film at that time. That was the catalyst.
What was it about the 2 classes that was just an immediate turnoff?
I wish I had some amazing story to tell you that'll make everyone laugh, but I just went in there. Like, you ever been to like you've been to a gas station before, but then you've been to like a gas station that's like in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, I don't even want to go to the bathroom. That's how I felt about this class. Like, I don't even want to be sitting in this chair. Like, the roof is leaking. Everyone in here is not paying attention. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. There's not a computer in the entire room, like, or an instrument. Like, this is a recording class. There's not even a computer. So I just like got the worst vibe ever, and I walked out. And I was walking down the hallway, just kind of figuring out what the hell I was going to do with like the rest of my semester. Like, am I going to drop out? Like, what am I going to do? And then I ran into this group of kids who all had like the same kind of branded sweatshirt on. And it was this, I found out it was this TV show that was like a student run show called Alt News 2646. And it was like a magazine style documentary show. And they would go around and they would like research cool topics and go film them kind of on their own dime and edit pieces and then go shoot bands and edit performances together and then put it together into this tight show that would air on PBS every month. And so I just like stopped them and I'm like, hey, what is this? And they told me all about it. And I just joined that immediately. And that just became like, I just immersed myself fully into like producing this TV show. And I fell in love with it. I just thought it was so fun. And that's kind of how I started my career in film.
So had you not walked down that specific hallway and seen those guys, had they not all been wearing matching hoodies?
Yeah. I 100% think I would have had a completely different trajectory right now. Isn't that weird? Actually thinking about that and pinpointing that moment like this.
Yeah, that is weird.
That freaks me out.
And then you spent the next 4 years of college pursuing film and television.
Yeah, doing this TV show.
Were you able to get out of your music classes? It was like early enough.
Yeah, I was. I just went. It was like literally the first week. I went to my counselor. I was like, "This is a joke. Like, I want to do radio, TV, and film." And so they allowed me to do that. And the funny thing was, and I kind of going back to why I think what my comments about the school not being great, or like the classes I was in for radio, TV, and film weren't great either. Like, they were very pedestrian. And you know, the thing about these two kind of industries, music and film, and really just like entertainment in general, it's like you don't learn about it by reading books. You learn about it by just getting dirty and jumping in and like getting your hands on a camera, getting your hands on an instrument, and just figuring things out and learning from your peers and having someone to guide you. Like, that's the best way to engage. And so it's just like these professors, God bless them or whatever, but we were just spending 6 months reading books about it. It's like, we haven't even touched a camera yet. And I'm just a hands-on kind of learner, so I was very frustrated by that. So fortunately, I had this show to immerse myself in, which I spent pretty much every waking moment doing. And the funny thing was, it was completely outside of class. It was an extracurricular activity. You didn't get really any credit for it. It was just something we all did because we loved it. And so I barely scraped by on my grades. And I just did the bare minimum in all of the classes, because as soon as I was out, I was going over to the lab and, writing a segment or researching something or cold calling someone that I wanted to interview for a documentary subject. And then we would scrape all of our beer money together and do these road trips across the US with, a couple cameras and some lights that we figured out how to use by ourselves. And we would put a TV show together. And that was just like the coolest adventure.
What exactly was your position? Were you producing? Were you actually interviewing people? Were you doing it all?
Yeah, you kind of have to do it all. It's like there's no real hierarchy. There's like two executive producers, quote unquote executive producers that are kind of in control of the direction of the show and the content that gets to air. But it's really up to you to like come up with an idea and then go execute on it and then bring it back and then figure out how to edit it yourself and then put something together that is entertaining and of good quality, good enough to get on, to a PBS show.
Right.
And the funny thing is, every year it would just clean up at the Emmy Awards, like the Chicago Mid-America Emmys. We would get, 3 or 4 Emmys a year for best program, best segment, best editing, all sorts of stuff. So I came into it like there was already a pretty big pedigree on the show. And so it wasn't just like this ragtag team of, people trying to figure out how to be video producers, but like there was kind of already a system in place and a quality.
So despite the school's shortcomings, you were able to find success with this group of people within the school?
They didn't support the show at all. Actually, they tried to shut it down. So it's like another thing. It's like the best thing about that school was the fact that the show existed and it was like, reaching outside the boundaries of Carbondale, Illinois. And, we'd go to LA and we'd be at the college Emmys that, the ceremonies in North Hollywood at the, Academy of Television Arts and Sciences building with some of the best, young college producers and creators in the world or in the United States. And we'd be winning. It's
right.
Like nothing else like that ever happened at that school. They wanted to shut us down. Are you kidding me? Come on.
That's kind of strange to think that despite all the odds.
It's because we were completely unreliant on, the adults to help and the system. And we did it all outside the system. And I think they were cynical about that.
And so what did you actually major in?
Radio television was the actual major. But did I tell you I failed out of college?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but so my senior year, I failed out of the first semester of my fourth year, my senior year. And it's just because my grades were so bad.
Yeah, what was that like?
I mean, I didn't give a shit. I had like 5 Emmys,
Right.
like personally with my name on it. And so it was literally like 5 minutes later, a buddy of mine who was a year older, he had this really, really great job down in Atlanta. He graduated and went to Atlanta and became a senior editor at this really big post house. And he was editing, huge stuff for Turner, which is based out of Atlanta. So like doing big spots for TNT and TBS and Cartoon Network and, big stuff that airs nationally. And he called me, he's like, hey, we're expanding. And at that time, I felt like at that time I was my senior year when I failed out, I was the executive producer of the show. So I was the head of the show. I was the head editor and like the head kind of content chief. And so when we got along really well, this guy, John, another John, funny enough. And so, yeah, he called me and he's like, hey, we're expanding. Do you want to come down to Atlanta and work with us? And I'm like, yeah, I just failed out. I got nowhere to go. So this is perfect timing. Yeah. So I literally like packed up my stuff that weekend and I drove down on Monday and I started work on Tuesday and I never looked back.
Were you kind of hesitant because you were doing actual television production and now going to like a post house is a little bit more behind the scenes kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I loved editing. It was my favorite craft. I think that had to do with broadcasting. And that's what I think I was strongest at at the time. So it was easy for me to say yes and go down there and just like immediately be editing. The big thing I started editing is TNT would acquire the rights to like movies, like back in the day, TNT used to be basically just all movies with a couple originals. And so they'd have to do their like TNT branded trailers of these movies. And that's what I would cut. So it was a blast. And I was making more money than my parents ever did straight out of failing out of college. Oh. So I was like, fuck yeah, this is a big win.
What was Atlanta like?
It was cool. It was like the first time I was really away from everybody that was like in my life, up until that point as a 20-year-old.
And you moved by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Drove down. I lived on John's futon for like a good 6 months. And
Wow, a job and a couch.
I know, man, it's the American dream. Yeah, it was good, man. I had a great time. It was the right path for me. If I wasn't going to be in some big band or whatever, then this felt like the next best thing. It felt like I was on a path.
You were in Atlanta for 4 years doing stuff at the same job.
Yeah, same job. Just kind of, we became, one of the top post houses in Atlanta, doing some of the best work out there. And then I had one of my clients who got transferred out to LA, and I was like, well, you're going to need an editor, right? She's like, yeah, actually. So I went home that day, and I remember walking in our little apartment. I had met my wife, the first year I moved down to Atlanta, and we had like a very quick relationship, and we got engaged the following year, then married the following year. So we were living together, and I remember coming in the apartment, and she was sitting on the toilet, and I just like barged in the bathroom. I'm like, do you want to move to LA? She's like, what? And I'm like, when you're done taking a shit, I'll explain everything. and then yeah, so
And then you waited.
that happened, and then I waited patiently.
You made a documentary. Was that when you were in Atlanta still?
Yeah, so the first like kind of thing I did that was, I guess, my own after I left school in Atlanta was this documentary called A Sister's Call, which is about this family and this brother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia very young, and he disappeared for 20 years. And his sister was like always searching for him, and would hear, stories that, like, oh, someone spotted him, or, well, there was like a phone call at one point that she had with him, and then he disappeared again for a long time. And eventually he showed up kind of like 20 years later on her husband's mother's doorstep as he was working for some church or whatever, and they were doing a furniture pickup, like a furniture donation pickup, just randomly. And she's like, oh my God, your call Richmond. And he's like, yeah. She's like, stay right here. And she went and called her daughter-in-law, Rebecca, which is Call's sister. Was like, oh my God, I found him. And so she drove like 4 hours that day and reconnected with her brother, and then spent 10 years trying to rehabilitate him. And it's just this incredible, heartbreaking story with layer after layer after layer. And it took me about 5 years to do it, because documentaries are a beast. I mean, you're going through hundreds of hours of archive footage, and then, you're just going along with the story. There's no script. So you just have to be kind of at the ready at any moment.
And then you finished the film.
And we did the whole festival circuit, won a bunch of awards, and now you can see it on Amazon. It's streaming on Amazon right now. But that was the first thing that I put my name on, that I was like, oh, okay. That kind of inspired me to start having an interest in producing films instead of just being an editor kind of behind the scenes, but start getting into the world of owning content and creating content from the ground up. And
it seems kind of parallel to television production, where there's a lot of things going on at once that you need to manage.
Yeah, you have to be an insane person to be a film producer, because most people, 99% of it is running around asking people for money and having people tell you no. And then finally you get someone that'll do it. And then you have to deal with, okay, well, now we have to cast it. And now we have to deal with 1,000 other things that, and any one of them can fall apart at the same time. So it's like you're constantly spinning plates, and hoping they don't fall over and crash. And a lot of the plates do crash, but you just have to keep spinning. And then eventually, just through sheer perseverance and willpower, you get something made. Eventually it will get easier, and it does get easier. I've done 5 movies now. And we're starting to get kind of a system in place of financiers, and we know the actors, we know the agents, and there's like a whole machinery that just takes time to start to understand. And once you're kind of in the game, then you can see how it can become a viable career. But in the beginning, it's just so chaotic and
So
frustrating.
would you say perseverance is your strongest quality?
Yeah, perseverance is easily at the top, and a willingness and an understanding that taking shit from 1,000 different angles is going to happen, and just being willing to let that happen and just roll with the punches. You kind of have to have like it's perseverance, but like a positivity about it too. Like you can't get frustrated. You can, but you can't let it weigh you down. It's just part of the game.
You came out here to LA with an editing job.
hmm Which I highly recommend, by the way,
What's
to all the kids listening out there. It's very hard to make it in this industry, and it's going to take years and years and years. And I see, unfortunately, a lot of people like kind of go all in and not have a backup plan, or not have a job that can pay their rent and put food on the table. And then they burn out and then they have to go and just like get a regular job. And then they're so frustrated that they don't even, go back to the dream that they had. So it's like finding that balance of being realistic. Like you still have to live, get a job that's flexible, get a job that'll cover your nut, but then keep the hustle going, and a lot of guys like, I meet a lot of young directors, like, I just want to be a director. I don't need a job. I'm like, well, you're not going to make it, because they're going to just completely flame out, because it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a very, very long time. So yes, coming to LA with an editing job was very important. And it allowed me, one, to provide for myself, but two, it put me in the room with a lot of the people that I'm going to end up working with, producers, directors, etc. So like, eventually your peers. So it worked out really nicely to be an editor. I would recommend it unless you're just born with so much money and you can buy your way in, which happens all the time. And if that's the case, call me. But unless, but unless that's the case for you, and you want to be a filmmaker, I highly suggest learning editing, because it's great money, if you can, master it, and there's no reason not to.
Is there something that was there like an oversight or a mistake or something that when you came to LA that you wish you would have known?
Get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer
as early as possible. Yeah, that's real. People are kind of self-interested by nature, and it's very easy to allow people to walk over you when you are getting started. And even if you are a trusting person, which hopefully most people are, that trust gets betrayed, I think, rather quickly, you find out. And it's very frustrating. So I think the biggest thing is, and it took me a long time to learn, is like, know your value, even though it's hard when you're just starting out, is like, know that you have a value, and that if someone is going to take advantage of you, that either protect yourself so they can't do it, or know that they're taking advantage of you. Be smart enough to know that you're being taken advantage of, so that way you can avoid that type of situation next time around. I think that was the hard part for me, is I'm a very trusting, kind of like nice person by nature. And to just see the selfishness and like the cutthroat nature of the game that's being played out here was really a really tough transition. And then of course you get stronger and you learn how to play it, and you don't want to repeat that kind of behavior that was done to you, but it's there and you know how to protect yourself.
So do you think if you would have had a lawyer, you would have had someone in your corner to bounce ideas off, make sure they're securing your rights in a contract, etc.?
Yeah, that's the thing, that's exactly it. Especially if you're trying to produce, because your idea, or like, if unless you are in a contract guaranteed a certain amount of compensation, at the end of the day, it's more likely than not that someone is going to try to bone you and you're not going to get anything. Like, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's also very true. And I see it happen all the time, and it's happened to me. So it's more about just having someone that will fight for you, that isn't fighting for you just, it's not like a friend just yelling at someone. It's someone who goes, no, if you want this to happen, then you need to sign here, and they need to be compensated this amount. And then at the end of the day, if the project is valuable enough to all of the other parties involved, they will eventually sign the thing. Because if you don't, like if you're a big part of it or something and they're trying to screw you on it, you can put a huge wrench in that machine. It's already hard to make a movie, but if you're starting to make waves and, you know, there's a lawyer getting involved and, you know, people are like, all right, they would just rather not have the hassle. They'll give you what you deserve and then they'll make the movie. But if you just sit back and hope that they're going to take care of you, you are more likely than not going to get screwed.
There's also the fear that getting a lawyer will make people not want to work with you because it makes things more of a hassle. But if that's the case, that's probably a red flag that you shouldn't be working with these people.
That's exactly right, because guess what? Everybody else has a lawyer. So, and that's the kind of stuff that they, instead of reading books about how to shoot a film or whatever, or like what someone did when they made a movie, like this is the kind of stuff. Give someone a camera, go create something, and then here's how you need to protect yourself. This is what people don't even know how to do a tax return when they get out of school. You know what I mean? Like how to start an LLC, how to protect yourself. That's the kind of stuff that they need to be teaching right alongside, like physically handling whatever the thing is. So if it's a computer or a camera or a guitar, you know, it's all the same. But business is business regardless of where you are. And it's more of the process of making a film than actual filmmaking. And that's what they leave out, unless you're in a very, very expensive school.
Right. So you've been in LA for a few years now, produced on 5 movies, and you still do editing work?
Yep.
And now what?
That's it. I'm done. I'm out. This is the last thing I'm doing, this podcast, and then I'm jumping on a plane. I'm going to the beach.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a big day for me.
While you're ahead.
It's just now it's more but bigger and more, hopefully more streamlined. But yeah, so you just build. And I was fortunate enough to do this movie called Mudbound, which was, you know, nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards and Golden Globes and stuff, which was, we knew when we had the material that it was very special, and we always felt like it could get to that point. But the fact that we made the film and it did get to that point was a very strange, exciting experience. What are you doing, John? How is this podcasting thing going?
Yeah, it's a nice way for me to catch up with folks without having to leave my house.
God, you're definitely in your pajamas right now, aren't you?
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Kyle.
Yeah, bud. Anytime. Great talking to you, John.
Thank you again for listening to my podcast, Jon Walker's Podcast. Until next time, have a good one.